Let's explore the concept of what we mean by smart. Well, if we're going to get to this thing called the singularity, which is supposed to be the point at which computers have the same intelligence as people, there's a few things that are needed. First, we need learning algorithms. Like in people, genetic and acquired, nature versus nurture. That's how we get smart, and that's how computers would need to do the same to get smart. Secondly, we need self-modifying code. In humans, we could describe this as evolution. Thirdly, we need generative code. This could be described as creativity. How do you make new ideas, new ways of doing things? Finally, fourth point, we need fancy computer architecture. It's got to be fast. Now, Alan Turing, we covered him earlier, had the Turing test. If a user cannot reliably tell a machine from a human, the machine is said to have passed the test. He said that in 1950. Of course, this is not AI. That's about fooling people into thinking they're dealing with another person. And there's plenty of programs that can do that. Even a fairly basic chatbot can fool somebody for a little period of time. Of course, the problem with the Turing test is it leaves the tricky problem of consciousness. And somewhere inside all that grey matter is the notion of consciousness. Now, philosophers have argued for this, existing or not existing, for many, many decades. Some would say that consciousness is the manifestation of complex systems. It doesn't exist in its own right. But we can debate that another day. These machines by IBM were put together to create something called the Blue Gene computer. They used it to simulate 1% of a human cerebral cortex. That is 1.6 billion neurons with 9 trillion connections. They did that in 2011. And the idea was to get a step closer to AI. Unfortunately for IBM, it was discovered earlier this year by the Salk Institute that the brain had 10 times more memory capacity than originally thought. The brain can actually hold as much information as the entire web. Still, IBM is doing pretty well with what they call the Watson, and they've been focusing since then on algorithms for artificial intelligence. You probably remember IBM winning the Jeopardy game in 2011. I believe they won a $1 million prize. But what does this mean for us as web developers? Well, chatbots, for one, are big news right now. They're all over the web, and they're being offered by Microsoft, Facebook, lots and lots of service providers. My favourite way of programming a chatbot is using AIML2, that is the Artificial Intelligence Markup Language version 2. It looks a little bit like HTML, and if you've got a good programming environment, you can spend a lot of time training it with natural language rather than actually having to go in and code. Other smart things, a lot revolves around the Internet of Things, that is the ability to connect physical devices to each other and to the web and to your phone. And the great thing about the Internet of Things is it's moved from being a kind of hobbyist, geeky activity which needs lots of different programming and fiddling around with different devices to having a JavaScript solution. So now you can program a lot of these devices using JavaScript, which is great. Hearables, well, what are hearables? Hearables are basically devices that will listen to you, figure out what you want, and give it to you. So I guess Amazon's Alexa is the best known of these at the moment. You can buy Alexa, it will order movies for you, order pizza, and all that kind of stuff. Chrome, the Chrome browser, deals with speech recognition, speech synthesis, as do some of the other browsers, which means that that capacity is within your own reach when you're programming on the web. And I think what will make Amazon really stand out and be successful with Alexa is that third parties can develop specialist elements. So if you're a pizza delivery company, you can write your own piece of code for the Amazon device, and it will gain a better understanding of how to order your pizza. I think they're partnered with Domino's, so I guess that's what's going on. The thing about artificial intelligence is it does need self-modifying code in order to learn. You might be surprised that you can do that with JavaScript. And here's just a few lines of JavaScript that will actually insert new JavaScript into your document. Of course, there are some risks when you do that relating to security. You can steal people's credit card information as they type it in if you can hack into their web pages. But in principle, if we're going to see artificial intelligence, then JavaScript is not a bad option. It can communicate with many other websites, and it has access to the web for all the backlog of data that mankind has built up over the many years. And I think the point about this is that users expect smart web apps. They may not expect your app to be as smart as Watson, but anticipating your users' every demand is not easy, and it can go wrong. Users still expect it to go right. Word of warning though, just be careful when you have self-modifying code and learning algorithms. Here's an example that's kind of quite funny. Microsoft's bot framework has a little bot called Your Face, and I put in my picture. This grumpy bot comments on what you look like. In this instance, decided that I had a face like a lovesick dog and a moustache that needs more effort. That was pretty mean. It's pretty spot on with my age though. Not so funny, when Microsoft launched a chatbot called Tay, it got extremely racist fairly early on. And here's a comment it made: Ricky Gervais learned totalitarianism from Adolf Hitler, the inventor of atheism. What does that mean? Well, who knows, but Microsoft had to take that chatbot offline pretty quickly. It had learned some bad habits from the users. In some ways, I guess it indicated it was successful, because when we're growing up as kids, we learn a lot from the people around us. Let's take this to a crazy logical conclusion, or perhaps an illogical conclusion. We're going to look at a scene from John Carpenter's cult movie, Dark Star, in which a smart bomb is damaged and wants to blow up, even though it's stuck on the spaceship and hasn't been dropped on a planet. Let's have a look.
Now, Bob, consider this next question very carefully. What is your one purpose in life?
To explode, of course.
And you can only do it once, right?
That is correct.
And you wouldn't want to explode on the basis of false data, would you?
Of course not.
Well then, you've already admitted that you have no real proof of the existence of the outside universe.
Yes, well,
So you have no absolute proof that Sergeant Pinback ordered you to detonate.
I recall distinctly the detonation order. My memory is good on matters like these.
Of course you remember it, but all you're remembering is merely a series of sensory impulses which you now realize have no real definite connection with outside reality.
True. But since this is so, I have no proof that you are really telling me all this.
That's all beside the point. I mean, the concept is valid no matter where it originates. So if you detonate in
9 seconds.
you could be doing so on the basis of false data.
I have no proof it was false data.
You have no proof it was correct data.
I must think on this further.
Well, I won't spoil what happens next for you because you might want to see the movie, but I can say it doesn't go all that well. Okay, let's talk about mobile and the web. Here are 2 dates to remember. You can forget any others. Well, perhaps apart from my birthday. 1989, the World Wide Web was invented. 2007, Apple launched the iPhone. It's the first phone that got you onto the internet easily, allowed you to browse the web. The internet, the web and mobile can be described by this diagram. You can see local devices there in the bottom left, which contain the web browser, and the web browser connects to the cloud where the server's based to retrieve and send data. The server holds a lot of information, and it also holds scripting and coding in order to do interesting things with your data and perhaps to connect you up with other users. Pretty straightforward, but a very powerful arrangement. There's what I call the Gang of Four: markup languages, style sheets, local scripting, and server-side scripting. These are the scripting and programming languages that will allow you to do pretty much whatever you like when you're dealing with advanced web production. So locally, HTML5, CSS3, JavaScript, server-side, PHP. And if you're an advanced user, coder, then you may be using something like Node.js, which allows you to share JavaScript across both the local and the server side. So what is the impact of mobile? Well, there's a few views, and let's look at them. Here's the poverty-stricken view. Living on $6 a day means you have a refrigerator, a TV, a cell phone. Your children can go to school. That's not possible on $1 a day. That was Bill Gates. And I think that's important because expectations for people now are not just basic access to fridges and TVs, but also a cell phone. Here's the grown-ups view. A cell phone has become the adult's transitional object, replacing the toddler's teddy bear for comfort and a sense of belonging. That's Margaret Heffernan. What about Spielberg with the dreamer's view? Technology can be our best friend, and technology can also be the biggest party pooper of our lives. It interrupts our own story, interrupts our ability to have a thought or a daydream, to imagine something wonderful, because we're too busy bridging the walk from the cafeteria back to the office on the cell phone. And the billionaire's view, Ted Turner. To be happy in this world, first you need a cell phone, and then you need an airplane. Then you're truly wireless. So the phone, in a way, is all things to all people. Let's look at some of the trends of mobile devices. Well, perhaps we can dream about features and functionality that a mobile phone doesn't yet have. Wouldn't it be great if it could peel potatoes, break the sound barrier, or destroy the universe? Well, I guess if it's connected through the Internet of Things, maybe it could do some of those. But let's have a look at what's really going on in the mobile universe. First of all, let's look at how people are using smartphone apps. Well, if you look at this table, you'll see that increasingly app use is dominated by social networking and games. Collectively, they represent about 70% of use. And that data is going back to 2013. The trend has actually continued going forward. Let's look at games in specific terms. So the games market is quite fragmented. You've got PCs, tablets, smartphones, handhelds, consoles. And I think what you can see here is there's significant growth for the smartphone side, which is the greener area. It's been creeping up year on year, and we're at about 16% at the moment of games activity in terms of market value. Obviously, it's a lot more expensive to buy a console game, so that keeps the value higher in that area for the time being. But I think what's worth noting is that those console games, in terms of market share, are stabilising and perhaps shrinking a tiny bit. That's the reddish figure, which fell from 33% to 32% between 2015 and 16. So smartphones are a good place to put your games, and I guess that's why Nintendo have finally launched Super Mario on a mobile phone. In terms of global smartphone shipments, phones are being shipped all around the world. The important thing to note is that China is a growing piece of the market, and that means that if you're going to make money, monetize, or make available your web apps, you need to make sure that China is not something you just ignore. The other thing is, don't be too hung up on what operating system you're actually using. You can see here that although iOS is pretty dominant in the United States and pretty big ticket item in the UK, globally it's got a very small share of the market compared with Android. Android's got about 84%, compared with iOS it's 11%. that's another reason why cross-platform apps are really important. It allows you to capture all of those users. Look at app downloads. This is 2014. So Google Play, far more downloads. However, the interesting thing is that the revenue was far higher for iOS. And here, revenue by country. Okay, this data is a little old now, 2013. But the important thing there is that if you're looking to get revenue from your sales, monetization, you should be thinking about what languages your app needs to work in. Okay, so US, Japan, South Korea, UK, they're the biggest in terms of revenue. That means thinking about making stuff either language independent or allowing your users to work within those Asian languages. Now you can see the way in which US users are consuming mobile apps versus web consumption. And I think what's interesting is that web browsing now is about 72 minutes per day, whereas mobile app use is about 94 minutes a day. Again, this is quite old data, but newer data does show that even web browsing is now happening more on a phone than it is on a desktop or laptop. The amount of digital time spent by users on desktops, mobile apps and mobile web is interesting as well. Here, the point I was just making, there's more time spent on mobile web and app than there is on desktop. And the mobile web is growing in terms of use, growing a little bit slower, but as we reach saturation point with apps, that will grow quicker.